Oh, whoops. Oh,
Recording in progress.
with audio.
Oh, let me know which page you're sharing it on, Silly. You're living it on so that way I can share.
Okay, I'll copy the link on there.
You know what's funny, Sala, is every time we do these classes, I'm like, okay, tomorrow's Friday, but it's not.
I know it feels like it, right?
It does. Oh, I love this.
Oh, hello everyone, and welcome to our part 4 in our 8-part inner wellness series. Today we'll be talking about what is underneath your anger? Just a couple of overview and requests. Just please, we ask you mute your mic when you're not speaking and be mindful of the background noise and distractions around you as much as possible. Sala and I will both be monitoring the Zoom and Facebook chats. With that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and pass it over to our wonderful therapist.
Thank you, Celie. Greatly appreciate it. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are at. My name is Scarlett. I am a licensed marriage and family therapist and a boundaries coach. I am super excited to be in this space with you all because we are having these great community conversations about different topics that are not truly talked about in our communities. And so I have the true honor of doing this series with my colleague Sala. And so just a little bit about me. I've been a therapist and a coach over a decade in this field. Super honored that I'm able to be in these different spaces and bring these topics as well as with Sala as well. So that being said, I'm going to shoot it over to Sala so she can introduce herself.
Good evening. We are so excited to be here today and to be able to, hopefully engage with everyone that's joining us tonight in conversation on this topic of what is underneath your anger. But my name is Sala. I'm also a licensed mental health therapist here in the state of Washington. I work in my own private practice, and I mainly work with clients that are going through anxiety type disorders, life transitions, and trauma as well. So just a little bit of the clinical part of what I do, but truly my heart is in doing these community conversations, because then we get to hear from our communities as far as, like, what the need is, and then we are able to, sort of share some of this mental health information that Scarlett and I have, and just being in our field and working in our field. So we're truly excited to be able to hopefully join in conversation tonight. And so if you have any questions at any time throughout tonight's conversation, if you have any questions, comments, anything that maybe you need clarity on, please let us know. Put it in a comment if you don't want to unmute and speak. I will be monitoring the chat on here and then also on Facebook. So feel free to ask your question. We're really hoping that we'll get some good engagement. So looking forward to it. And with that being said, Scarlett, back to you.
Thank you, Sala. Greatly appreciate that. So again, just to reemphasize what Sala said, that again, we are truly about community conversation. So we want to give you all permission, keyword permission, to interrupt us if needed, so that there can be clarity, and so that we can again have a conversation, answer the questions, and not wait to answer it. Because like I said, we want you all to be a part of this. So that being said, I'm going to share my screen, and so we can get this started. All right. Can you see my screen, Sala? Are we good?
Yes, you're good to go.
Awesome. Okay. So underneath your anger, one of the big reasons why Sala and I wanted to come to discuss this topic is because it's very taboo in our culture, and part of what the continual reasoning behind it was because, anger, like Salaf has said before in previous classes, like, anger gets a really bad rap. And it's almost like it's this taboo, it's this negative thing, like you can't have it, you can't do it. And if you are angry, like, just don't do it in front of anybody else. And as we go throughout this presentation, we'll talk about honestly, the importance of anger. So we hope that you are able to walk away with a different perspective of what anger is and how we can handle it differently than probably what we've done before, like within our own household, within how we grew up, or within our friend circles or community circles, and work circles as well. So that being said, we're going to do a review of what we talked about 2 weeks ago of why your feelings are important, and then a small video introduction about, anger. Then we're going to talk about anger and culture, because that's kind of where a lot of we get of how we are able to express our feelings, and in particularly anger in this sense. Then we're going to talk about the different responses that we have when it comes to anger, which is fight, flight, fawn, or freeze, and those are always fun to go over because people don't really think of, because when people think of anger, a lot of times people think fight, but actually people have different responses to anger, which is the flight, fawn, or freeze. And then we're going to talk about how anger literally is not the problem. And we'll get more into that. And then we're just going to talk about how to start sharing it. How can we start sharing our anger healthily, and then have a Q&A. So that being said, we're going to we're going to do this quick review. And so this is part of what we talked about in 2 weeks ago, why feelings are important. And so again, the reason that we are talking about this, because research has shown that when you talk about your feelings, it reduces the intensity of them, and it is actually relieving. And so I always take this to the emotional closet, that a lot of times, if we keep stuffing things into our emotional closet, one day the closet door is not going to close anymore. Or what I talk about, the shaken soda bottle, is with my clients is it's like one day, if you keep stuffing it in, you keep shaking up the soda bottle, one day the top of the bottle is going to pop open and everything is just going to kind of come oozing out. And so that's part of what we want to not get to that point when it comes to anger. Next thing is, when sharing your feelings are important because it helps you and others understand you better. And so part of what I talk about a lot, especially with my clients, is talking about the feeling and the reason for the feeling. And so because it gives a better picture of what you're going through, rather than just not saying anything at all. Because a lot of times, especially when it comes to anger, people will sit and be like, why are they so angry? Like, what's going on? And because you're not explaining what's truly going on with you. Next is what we talked about before, the layers of feelings, like the importance to identify the surface, the middle layer, and the root feeling. And so the root feeling is absolutely important to identify, because again, what I always talk about with feelings, especially when we have that initial first feeling, and especially when it comes to anger in this sense, anger is a buildup of something. And so it's just like especially when I talk with clients that I work with, I go, what is, if you weren't allowed to be angry, what is that root feeling? Like, what is it? And then we'll go a little bit through that of what it could possibly be. Next is, just because you don't talk about your feelings, they don't disappear. Again, it's the buildup, it's the no more room in your closet. And like the other part is what I've talked about 2 weeks ago, is that you can feel up to a combination of 34,000 feelings. It's wild to even say that, to be honest. And so when clients come to me and say to me, I don't know how I'm feeling, and I'm like, I always believe them. I'm like, okay, some of them we have to pull out the feelings wheel, some of them we don't, because we've done the feelings identification work. And I still, to this day, hand on Bible, still use a feelings wheel. So when somebody asks me, hey, Scar, how are you feeling? And if I don't know how I'm feeling, I will say, hey, let me get back to you. I need to look at my feelings wheel so I can figure that part out. So I say that to say to you, it's like, because I don't want you to be embarrassed that if you don't know what your feelings are, and not be embarrassed to use a resource that is truly for you. So Stella, anything you want to add to that before I move forward?
Only that, just want to put in a plug for our feelings class. So Scarlett has mentioned before, like, talking about this review of why our feelings are important. So we do have understanding your feelings class, and most of our courses are really introductory in nature. Like, it's foundational. It's really basic stuff that we put together, and we feel like this is important for our community to be able to really be able to grasp and understand about when it comes to emotions, when it comes to all of these things. And so if you're here today and you're kind of like, what review is she talking about? Well, that's a review from the previous class that we did. So hopefully when this comes back around, you can join us. So I just wanted to share that plug for our past classes.
For sure. And so when it does come back around, or if you don't have the patience to not wait for it to come back around, if you go on the King County Public Health page, there is a playlist that has a recording of our classes before, so you don't have to wait. And, just to continue to reemphasize what Sala was saying. And so part of the reason we talk about these foundational classes is because these are very important, because these things are important so that we can continue to understand who you can continue to understand who you are. And a lot of times, especially when it comes to feelings and emotions, emotional intelligence is not really taught after a certain age. So a lot of times, especially in the school systems, it's stopped, like taught after kindergarten, because you learn mad, sad, happy, glad, and tired and hungry. But as we have all felt throughout our life, we especially if you come see a therapist like Sala or like you're like, oh, I didn't know there were so many feelings. And because it's not really taught, and it's very important that we are actually having these types of conversations with our community, so that to let you know that these are the feelings, that your feelings are valid, and that you are valuable, and it is worth it for you to talk about these things instead of keeping it all in. With that being said, I'm just going to go to our next slide, and we're going to talk about your brain. And I always love talking about how this works in the body, so that you can understand what's going on in your body when anger or any feeling comes up. And particularly this one is talking about anger. So that being said, I'm going to start the video.
I'm not getting any audio, Scarlett.
Yeah, let me. I wonder why. Hold up a second.
Anger, like fire, can
Yeah,
be
you're good now. Yeah.
It can also destroy the longer we hold on to it, ravaging relationships and lives. Why do we have it? And why is its grip so powerful? Hi, I'm Peter Montoya from Thrive Union, and I'll be sharing our current thinking on anger as part of our How the Brain Works series. Anger developed to help us react quickly to protect ourselves. It arises primarily from an ancient portion of our brain called the amygdala, which triggers automatic responses when we're threatened, commonly known as fight, flight, or freeze. When distinguishing a threat, the amygdala activates the hypothalamus, which tells our pituitary glands to release the hormones like the stress chemical cortisol, adrenaline, and norepinephrine. Before we're even aware, our body is flooded with hormones and neurotransmitters that shoot up our heart rate, energize our muscles, and increase blood pressure, all to get us ready to fight. Systems like digestion and vision are limited, along with our prefrontal cortex, which controls reasoning. Our hippocampus quiets, reducing short-term memory and new memory formation. All of this makes us impulsive decision makers who may say harsh words we don't remember after the fact. These reactions helped our ancestors survive wild animal attacks. The long-term effects ravage our modern bodies. Too much anger compromises our brains, increase high blood pressure, heart disease, and compromise immune systems. Worse, the amygdala has trouble distinguishing modern slights from imaginary threats. So how do we manage our anger? Brain scans of murderers show damaged or less active prefrontal cortexes, showing that one key way to combat anger is to strengthen that area. But can you grow gray matter? Yes. Research shows that meditation has been shown to both shrink the amygdala and grow the prefrontal cortex. Research also shows that venting or suppressing anger actually builds it. Instead, mindfully observe your feelings or try reframing them. Imagine learning that the driver who cut you off just lost their child. Your anger would likely immediately turn into compassion. Our imagination can trigger the amygdala or quiet it. Try creating stories that reframe an offender's actions when there is no real threat. And don't forget meditation. Meditation is by far and away the best practice for reducing all recurring negative emotions. Changing how we approach our anger literally changes our brains. It frees us from the tyranny of automatic responses, and it helps us enjoy greater health, longevity, and fulfillment so we can thrive.
Thrive Union is a real world.
So that's how anger works in our brain. Before I go any further, I wanted to check in, see if anybody has any questions thus far, any comments before we move forward. Anything? Nothing? Cool. Okay, so that being said, now I'm going to need your participation, because my question to you all is, when you think about anger, and particularly how you grew up or how you think about it culturally, how is that viewed in culturally and in the family? So um, if anybody wants to unmute themselves and share, and then Sala and Celia, if there's anything from the chats, just let me know as well so we can address those as well. I mean, just don't all go at once. And so just to kind of break the ice, I'll start. Um, I'll say anger for me growing up was viewed as only certain people can do it. But me as the child, I wasn't allowed to do that. And if I did it, I got in a heap of trouble. There's a lot of consequences that came with that. But for me as an adult, I remember as reflecting back, I just remember being confused because I'm just like, but you did it, so why can't I do it? And I think it was a very interesting concept for that to go through, because then it became, for me, if I was angry and I knew I was going to get in trouble, I then just immediately went to silence. And then I just again bottled it all in, which essentially didn't help me out in the long run, because with that I just didn't talk about anything, just period.
I think in my experience of, kind of viewing anger growing up, and what I saw was it was mainly with um it was mainly with like the men in my family, right? That I would see anger being displayed. And it was interesting because as you're talking, I'm like, well, I didn't really, I think probably the only other female that I saw that would show anger would be like my mom, if I did something that, like, got her really mad and she's getting ready to sass me or something, and then I see that anger. But other than that, I don't think it was ever like taught to me, like, hey, this is what this emotion is and how it can be viewed um as like any other emotion, as something that's like, okay, this is what you're feeling and let's process this anger. But I think it was just more so just something that happened, right? So I saw anger a lot in a lot of people, mainly men, mainly Samoan men growing up. I saw that a lot. But I don't think, as I'm thinking about it now, like I don't think I saw a lot of maybe women, Samoan women, display anger or mainly a lot of emotions really kind of growing up. That's my experience.
I,
That's speaking from my experience.
And what I would say for, like, I'll say how I experienced women experiencing anger. It wasn't taken out on the person who caused it. It was taken out on someone else. So it was just, I was the byproduct of someone else's anger, which honestly not the greatest and sucked. But because it goes back to, and we'll talk about it a little bit on this slide, is just like the difference how anger is between men and women. So, Celia, is there something you wanted to say? I saw you turned your video on.
yeah, no, I think from my perspective, and kind of my background and growing up, like I wouldn't change anything, but we were forced to suppress our anger.
Mhm.
Like if you were disciplined, in the old-fashioned Samoan way with a slap or the belt, and you were crying or showing emotion, they would always tell you, finish. I'm done hearing you cry. I'm like, bro, that hurt though. So, but I think as you got older as an adult, you just learn how to suppress it. And you just got
Mhm.
better and better and better at it. And then you just don't talk about your feelings. And I also wrote in the chat, it's almost like I remember an incident when I was a kid. I forgot what we did to our dad, but he said, "Look what you made me do. You made me get a ticket." And I was like, "Oh, we did that? Sweet." Um, which I mean, I don't parent my children that way, but I can look back at that and just like, oh, well, that's why I don't show very much emotion. or don't wear it on my sleeves. Yeah, I would say from my perspective and from a male Samoan perspective, we were taught to just bite it down, suck it in, and then we just
Mhm.
got better and better as we got older.
Well, so I'm wondering, so answer this, Celie. I wonder if you got this too, even though you had to bite it down. But if you looked a certain way, you probably heard fix your face.
Hmm.
Mhm. So that's
Yeah.
what it was just, so it was more suppression that was coming. Because I know I got that a lot.
Well, not
Like you can't
only
even look angry.
I know not only were you holding the tears back, but then you just had to get to that stoic nature. But I would just say as you grow up, you got really good at it.
Mhm.
You know, you can ask my ex-wife. I mean, it's just I just didn't talk about how I felt about things, but I learned at an earlier age how to suppress those feelings. And like you mentioned, Scarlett, they
Mhm.
don't just go away. They just
Mhm.
bottle up inside until one day it comes out on the wrong person.
Yeah, I mean, and that's why I want to talk about this topic, because it's there's when honestly, when I see our people as a whole, especially when I see someone angry, I'm just like, oh man, if they just actually shared what actually is going on, it's a different conversation rather than going to
Mhm.
a lot of times what I've seen our culture do is go straight to physical, you know,
Mhm. Yeah.
and it's just like it doesn't. And it's just like if we're taught the skills of how to actually say what's going on and actually, like I said, identify that root feeling, it's a whole different conversation to where we don't have to get to that fix. Now, I'm not going to say that it happens every single time, but it's a matter of, you know, it's a matter of like talking about and again, not suppressing it, not minimizing it, not saying like, oh, you're not allowed to do that or not allowed to be angry. And it's just more of like what continues to make us uncomfortable talking about those things, and part of that is we're not taught to how to talk about it. So that's why Sal and I are very very big on teaching stuff like this to our communities.
Or just giving the space to be able to have the conversation around it, right? Because I think from all of our various experiences and how we viewed culturally what, this emotion of anger is, like from all of our experiences, I can say that's like, well, no wonder why we see this emotion as like a negative thing, right? No wonder why we get angry, we see someone get angry, and we automatically default to, oh man, that's bad, like yeah, that guy's got anger issues, that person's got anger problems, when truly there's so much more to that. Like anger is just another emotion, just like we always teach in this class, it's a secondary emotion, right? So there's as you're going to talk later on about peeling back the layers and all the different layers adding up to it, like it's just no wonder why, because sometimes it's our experiences that we kind of grew up with culturally, how it was perceived, how it was viewed to us, that we're also able to see this emotion as like, oh, it's bad, when truly it's not.
Yeah, and then I would add that, these are just some radical ideas that we're trying to push on to our, next generation as they communicate their feelings better. Um, just from a logistical perspective, I showed some of my nephews that feelings wheel. I said, "Hey, fellas, next time we run out of words, hey, use this thing." And then I think they said, "Man, get that colonialistic practice out of my face." However, what I told them is actually two Pacific Islanders, Samoan females, actually were the ones who introduced me to this concept. I was like, bizarre, I know, right? So, I mean, putting more tools into different people's toolkits.
Well, yeah, I think that's interesting because it's like those things are looked at as colonialistic because that was only given to them, not really shared with us. And now that we have like two Pacific Island women and other BIPOC therapists who are like, yeah, no, these are what we need to do. And so because it goes back to like um the importance of that we are allowed to have our feelings and what's going on and like and make it more normalized than anything. So does anybody else want to add anything onto that before I click over, move on? So I see Dom that you're unmuted. Go ahead. Hi.
Yeah. Hello. So
Hi,
everything
Dom.
that you all are saying, hi, Sala. Everything you all are saying is bringing up so many thoughts for myself and memories. I'm like trying to process all these things. I definitely got the fix your face comment when expressing any sort of emotion other than contentment or being happy with life. Um, but seeing the, anger in my household seemed to be centered around performance. So academically, if I didn't perform a certain way, it's like, well, why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do that? And just anger toward me. And if I were to, God forbid, be upset at the professor for having unrealistic expectations or different scenarios, the response would be, well, you should be mad at yourself because you should have done better. You should have studied more. You should have this. But also don't, fix your face. So, like silly trying to hold it in, and then also that kind of self-criticism of, I should have done better, and now I'm upset at myself, and I want to please my family so that they're not mad. So that's one aspect of anger that I witness, which doesn't seem very fair to not have the skills to work through that. Yeah.
Oh, thank you for sharing, Dom. Greatly
Mhm.
appreciate that. I think the unfortunate thing what happens is that it creates conditional responses. And so what happens is it creates this, if they become angry at me, then there's this condition that I have to meet in order for me to feel wanted or accepted or revered or loved again, because you don't want to make them angry. So that's the unfortunate thing, that what happens, like what Dom and particularly what you're talking about is like, they got angry because I did this one thing. In order for them for not to be angry, I have to do this thing in order. And there's a bigger thing that has to happen in order for them to actually be in a place of, like what you were saying, of contentment, when it could be just like this one small thing that you did. And so instead of talking about it, it's just more like we just continue, again, like what we all agree upon is just learn to suppress it very, very, very easily. Anybody else want to add anything? Sala, was there anything in the chats? I just wanted to make sure.
Yes, Taniela from the chat was saying when you are angry, it will come off as disrespect.
Yeah, and I always find that
For
interesting.
sure.
It's like, the thing about it is it's such the word disrespect, and this is what I talk about a lot with my clients, is redefining actually what disrespect is. And it's because a lot of times disrespect in culture is looked at because you just said something, and it's not, and these are conversations I've actually had with family members. Tell me what was disrespectful. I didn't call you out your name. I didn't talk down to you. I didn't hit you. So could you explain to me so I understand what's disrespectful? And they're like, oh, actually, you were just sharing with me how what I did was bothering you. I go, yeah. So as I'm saying, it's really redefining in our culture what that really is, because if God forbid, if I replied back to something like what a family member says, whether it's my parent, uncle, aunt, and if I said to them, there's this like, you're being disrespectful, and I'm like, how? You asked me a question.
Mhm.
It's interesting for sure.
And there's so many of these experiences too that I hear or um, that I hear from clients as well, especially like our young people. Like for example, my dad told me to go wash the dishes. I dropped the dishes in the thing and it was making noise, and that's disrespectful. And guess what? Your dad is coming after you for making noises while you're cleaning the dishes, while you're washing the dishes. You're going up the stairs to get something that your dad asked you to get, and maybe you're stomping going up the stairs, and your parents are kind of perceiving that as disrespect. So what I see a lot is just this disconnect between parents, the older generation, and then the younger generation. And there's, because they're perceiving it as something else. They're seeing like, oh, you want, you're being disrespectful to me right now. You want to stomp your feet going up the stairs, right? But then the kid is like, have no idea what the parents are talking about. And they're by no means are they trying to disrespect their parents, but it comes off that way, or it's being perceived that way. And then here goes the anger, here goes everything else, and it just kind of snowballs from there.
For sure. So my next question is, why do you think anger is easy to show and is it acceptable?
I think it kind of, well, what I immediately think of is anatomy of the brain and how, the frontal cortex is shut off. So all you see is red. So everything just explodes from there and there's minimal filter and it's just everything just emerging. Like, so is it acceptable? Um, I'll let someone else try to answer that one.
Thanks, Dom. Appreciate that. Go ahead, Celie.
Yeah, I think it's reactionary. So you know how if you put your hand on a hot pot or something, you're gonna move it. I mean, you're not gonna let it just sit there. So I think anger is very similar, where it comes out, but then you learn how to suppress it as you get older and better at it. But and then to Salah's point, the one phrase I always heard growing up that never leaves my mind is "fiafali," which means, "Are you trying to be angry? Oh, are you showing attitude? What's going on over there?"
Mm-hmm.
And just like, no, man, I'm a kid. I don't know how to show emotion, and this is the first thing that came up because this is how I'm reacting to a situation where my body just pops off. But they get, and again, but I just say, as I mean, is it acceptable? Yeah, I mean, in my household, it wasn't. You just had to, respect your elders, do what you're told, and try to do it in a very docile way where you're not showing any emotion and you're just obeying.
I would answer that, in regards to is this acceptable? I'll say for me, it was only acceptable for the adults, not the kids. And I think just to reemphasize what Sala was saying, there's this disconnect that happens because a lot of times with parents and when I work with parents is they feel that because they taught their kid one time that they shouldn't do something or they should say something, that they're going to continue to get it. And that's not true. It's going to take them numerous amounts of times to get a concept, to get something. So when it comes to anger, why it's easy to show it is because I think there's like you were saying, Celie, like it is reactionary, and it's one of those like um almost it's just like, well, it's kind of the norm, kind of like it's okay to do that, but not really paying attention or not really thinking about the consequences that may follow, whether it's through herself, through or how you the negative consequences that happen to when you do it to somebody. So
Not to mention the consequences of how the kids are internalizing what is
Mhm.
going on and how that continues to impact them in their lives. And then now it's like it's either the cycle continues because, this is how I saw anger being displayed. So now it's like that's all I know. And so that can continue to perpetuate that cycle, right? Those responses. So just thinking about that, how like, yeah, because I get in a lot of young people as well that are just like, how their parents' responses sort of affects them in that way. And now they're trying to change it. They're trying to change that cycle. And they're trying to change their responses. They're trying to unlearn all of these different things that they have, sort of experienced, and they want to respond in a different way.
Yeah, and it also speaks to like a topic on like racial inferiority when you internalize that, because once they leave that home, there's this concept called exaggerated visibility. So once they get out in public, I mean, people are going to see this Samoan side of me because I can't show that at the house. But I mean, I think that's where the fear and the concept comes to Black and brown men, where they're not able to show their emotions at home. They suppress it, but when they get out there, they're going to sag their pants. They're going to talk loud. Everybody's going to hear them. So it perpetuates that. And I've seen that, kind of in my, football players that I've coached and even in myself growing up. So I was a good docile kid at the house, but once I left that
Mhm.
safety, man,
Yeah,
people in the street, they're going to know me. And
yeah.
I'm going to show who I actually am. But I think you can do that in a like a more respectful way if you learned how to kind of control your feelings or even to express it. Yeah, just
Mhm.
wanted to throw that out there.
No, I mean, I love that you say that because, honestly, in particular for me in the seat I sit in, like when I see someone who's like over exaggerating in public, where I go, I'm like, oh, I wonder what's going on at home, especially for kids, especially for boys. Because I used to work in the high school, one of the high schools in Washington, and when I would see ebony and brown kids, be very very loud, I'm like, and it was to the point for attention, not because they just were just being who they are. And it was for the negative attention. So where I sit at, I was just like, oh, I wonder what else is going on, because for me, there's always something underneath that.
Mhm.
Solid, you want to add anything before we go on?
Nope, you're good.
There
So,
was just an emoji in the chat from Mele Paitua. She just had a heart face in there, so I think she's vibing with the conversation.
yay. Go
Something, oh, sorry.
ahead, Dom. Go ahead.
Just real quick. So something that I was thinking of is, how do people show anger? I've also witnessed where the showing of anger is not as explosive and is more of like a drawing back and holding in, which if you're in a partnership with that person can be really difficult to say that that's acceptable when you're trying to work through a problem. So kind of what Celia was saying is like holding it in. So a learned response can be, I can't be angry, so I'm going to hold it in. And that, learned response and conditioning is, I would say, not acceptable.
Yeah, we'll definitely talk about when we get to the side of the fight, flight, fawn, or freeze, because what you're talking about, Dom, in regards to the almost kind of being a stalemate, kind of fits in what we're going to be discussing. So, the thing where it says anger can be used positively and not only negatively, and so like you said, and the reason why I say that is because, as we saw in the video, anger sometimes is used as protection. Like we need that sometimes. And so, and then, when I think about athletically, when we use anger through sports, to reach whatever, either whether the personal goal or the team goal, that's in a more constructive way that it's used, that it's not, because I think a lot of times when people think anger, they think violence. They think a lot of physical violence, and that's what I'm saying. That's why we're trying to undo the negativity of what the emotion of what anger is, that it is absolutely okay, that there is nothing wrong with anger whatsoever. Sal, anything you wanted to add?
You're good.
Ooh. All right, so in regards to like East versus West, in regards to anger, so part of what I wanted to talk about, like, because it goes back to especially with our communities, BIPOC communities, we're very community collectivistic, to where it is more important to put the group before self. So that's
Mhm.
the eastern part of that part. The western part of it is Western society, colonialistic, however you want to determine that it is actually encouraged, for you to say what is going on with you. And because for the East, for Eastern culture, it is because we are community collectivistic, we are highly representatives of our culture, of our community. And that if you did this whatever negative thing, and especially when it comes to anger, then there's this huge shame that comes down upon, like, look what you did, look how you represented the family. Now people are going to be like, look at, for me, for some, because I'm Samoan, it's like, look at how you are as a Samoan. Like, are all Samoans like that? And it's just like, no, it's not. And so and that's part of what my anger story I'll share with later. Like, that was one of the things I had to go through. And so I think a lot of times, especially in Eastern culture, that we have to continue to find the balance in regards to sharing our feelings and what's going on. Because what I said 2 weeks ago in the Know Your Feelings class is that if you actually take care of yourself, it actually is better for the group and better for the community. And I think a lot of times, but especially in our Eastern culture, is when we put the group before us, a lot of times we often a lot of times suffer in silence. And so that's where, and then those are the clients I actually see. And then we actually talk about how do we balance so that, because, and we talk, Sal and I definitely talk about a lot of balance is because our communities and it are very important to us. And it's not saying, let's get rid of that and do it this Western way. No, it's how do we find the balance? How do we set the small boundary and come to our, what's your boundary class, FYI. And,
That's our plug for our boundaries class.
and just really being okay with setting something small, because, and that's the thing, is like everything that we are talking about is to be inclusive and not isolate.
Mhm. Which goes back to kind of what Celi's nephews was saying to him, right? When he's trying to introduce this new concept, it's like, hey, you know, if you guys run out of things to say, here's a feeling, here's a tool, right? And really, like their response, their response is really common as to kind of like, because our community, this is an approach that our community is not really used to, right? So we're not saying, we're not introducing all of these mental health stuff as like, you know, replacing the culture, or we're not trying to take the culture away in any way, shape, or form. Like we're just sort of introducing a different avenue of help, right? And if it is helpful, because if what you've been doing all of this time and how you've been responding has not been helpful, you know, what's the alternative? Right? Are you going to continue those patterns and those cycles, or can we find something different? And that's all like what our goal is in all of these community classes, is just to introduce a different avenue, a different resource to our communities, and why we want to keep having the conversations around all of these topics.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, again, to continue to reemphasize, this is why we feel it's important that you see women of color, Pacific Island women, BIPOC women talking openly and transparently about these topics, because we know our community is quiet. And we wanted you all to see us talk about it, to let you know that it's okay, that we are allowed to have these things, have these tools, and have these conversations, that it's just not just for, you know, what we even when we think about therapy, it's just for, you know, white people. That's
Mhm.
why we are very big advocates about the what we're doing. So anger, power, and privilege, the difference between men versus women. So you talked a little bit about it earlier, that a lot of times, and Salah said it too, that a lot of times that it's, you know, sometimes it's more acceptable for men to be angry versus women. But I think just in general with that, um, so for example, a lot of times, like if a woman is angry, or if a man is angry, it's just like, oh, he's just angry, just let him be angry. Versus if a woman is angry, it's like, oh man, she's such a bitch. You know, so there's those types of different didactics and dialogues that happen. And so I always find that really, really interesting, because for me, anger is anger. It doesn't, you don't have to go to name calling. And it's like, what is it? How do we continue to say that, yes, it is okay for men to be angry. Yes, it is okay for women to be angry. So Sala, anything you wanted to add?
I was just thinking how I think maybe we do experience, as men and women, we do experience it the same way. We feel, you know, we all experience anger, but the difference could be that like men, they're a lot more, like we see it a lot more. It comes out a lot more. They're, you know, it tends to be explosive, versus where women, we internalize a lot of it and we suppress, right? And we keep it in because, you know, for some reason, there's this, you know, society deems women to be a certain way, even culturally, you know, we're tend to be, you know, seen and not heard, right? So even those different things. So I think we all experience anger, and like we said before, like it's not a bad emotion, but it usually gets a bad reputation amongst all the other emotion. But I think like for men tend to, you know, be a lot more expressive about it, versus women, we tend to kind of keep it in because of this whole self-image thing that we have, or maybe that's kind of put on us.
Absolutely. Before I go further, does anybody have any questions? Anybody need any clarity on anything? Anybody want to add anything before I move forward?
Well, it's interesting. I think one thing I will add within my family dynamics, my kids are mixed race, so they are always wondering why the women in my family are always angry or loud because they talk really aggressive. And I said, well, actually, that just shows care. I said if my mom and sister were very timid, I would know something's wrong. But they speak in that tone, in that level that like frightens my children. They're just like, it's not a man. No, 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 no. That's just how she shows her affection and emotion. Comes off as angry, but she's really trying to get me to get my things in order. I said similar for my sister and all my nieces. They sound aggressive and mean, but I was just like, nah, that's just who they are. If they came out on a different, spectrum of that scale, then for my family dynamics, I'm like, I mean, is everything all right? Y'all sound too okay right now. Where that, I would say from that aggressive tone, where the men in my family were really just super chill. How are you doing? Great.
Mhm.
Done. I mean, that's it. That's like the only emotion where relative to my sisters and my mom and nieces, it's just you're going to get a plethora of emotions of, oh, okay, I didn't want to hear all that. But I know that for our family dynamics, they're okay. And it's really teaching, I think, my, again, biracial children that, yeah, no, everything's all right in the Samoan side of your nationality or ethnicity. I just
Yeah,
wanted to add that.
no, and thank you for adding that because it brings up when I especially think about, Samoan women in that there are only certain ways that you can show emotion, and sometimes that's just through, regular directions or directives. And so, because a lot of times, we're not given permission to talk about actually what's going on, so we have to figure out a way to do that. And I just think that's across the board with just BIPOC populations just in general. So I wonder if it would be different if they would give them their own selves permissions to do it differently rather than, and if that's fine with how they're doing that, there's nothing wrong with that. But I always wonder in that sense, it's like if they gave themselves permission to do it differently, how would that be for them? Would that actually be relieving for them? Because like we talked about a little bit earlier, like the importance of expressing your feelings is just, if you don't express it, it doesn't relieve anything. So, Sala, anything before I go forward? You good?
Yep, you're good.
On a freeze. This is fun. Because Sal and I thought this was important because when people always think of anger, they think of the fight response. And so we're going to go through each one and we're going to give examples of how the fight, fawn response shows up in us. And then I'll just definitely give examples of what it is. We're just going to talk about what it is, and then give examples of examples of each thing. So the responses that you have, whatever it may be, fight, fawn, or freeze, it's your brain's preparation for a physical response. A lot of times trauma truly impacts how you respond. So for example, if you only saw yelling, if you only saw hitting, that's most likely going to be your response growing up, because for you that was an indicator that it was okay to do that. Sometimes it could be silence. Sometimes it can be anxiety. So it just depend on it's unfortunate that happens. That is because of trauma. It impacts how we respond. So with fight, it's our body's way of facing perceived threat that's aggressive. So this can be shown in, like, if you tighten your jaw, you clench your fist, you grit your teeth, you grind your teeth, you have the urge to punch, kick or stomp something. You can cry in anger, which I've seen quite a bit. And you want to attack the source of danger in this sense. So with flight, it's your body's urge to run. And I think it's always interesting when it comes to flight, because people think just run. When they see run from danger, they think they think of physical running a lot of times. So the flight response can usually be like you can be fidgety, you can be tense, you can be constantly moving some part of your body, some part of your leg or your legs. You feel restless. You can be excessive exercising. There you can have like a rapid thoughts. So those are some ways to have a flight response when it comes to running from danger. Next is freeze, is your body's inability to move or act against the threat. So you literally freeze. You feel stiff, you feel cold. Sometimes you can hear like your own heart beating really loudly. And then this is another way that you can also feel anxiety within the body as well. And then the last one is fawn. It's your body's response to please someone to avoid conflict. And I think when people think of fawn, they think of delicate, they think of a deer. But it's a lot of times it's just like we go into fawn. So for example, as a kid, sometimes we go into fawn because we don't want to get in trouble because of whatever has happened. So as an adult, this can look as over agreement. You're trying to be over helpful, and your primary concern is to make someone else happy, regardless of regardless if the offense was done to you. So those are the fight, flight, freeze, or fawn responses. Sala, anything you wanted to add to that?
No, just again reiterating that these are the different ways that your body respond when it perceives a threat or when it feels like you are in danger. Your body can respond in any of these different ways. Now, there's nothing, again, just want to say like there's like we all have this. We all have this. Like this is our survival instinct, right? This is something that is in each and every one of us. The only thing, the only way this becomes, maybe not a good thing is when this part of your brain just kind of gets turned on, even when you're in maybe a safe situation. But then you're still kind of like that switch in your brain that's just kind of like fight, flight. You're still responding in this way, like you're in survival mode, but really like you're in a safe place. So your brain is not able to recognize that even though you are safe, you are in a safe place, but your body and your brain is still kind of responding in that way, like you are still in danger when you're not. So that's when you start seeing a lot of the issues that maybe kind of come up for people. But just again want to reiterate that this is not a bad thing. Like we all have this in us. This is innately in us. But again, when it does get to the point where all of these different responses tends to interfere or tends to get in the way of relationships, and it start to harm you in ways like how you respond to people, how you are, how you react, then it becomes a problem.
Mhm. And just for transparency, my fawn response was very interesting because it came because I didn't want to get in trouble as a kid because I wanted to avoid whatever was going to happen. As an adult, what it came into is like I would um no matter how poorly someone treated me, I put their needs before mine, and it's because I wanted to avoid the conflict that may have been coming. And so, and that's what Sala is talking about when the response become in a way to where it interferes with your overall inner well-being. That's when we have to address what actually is going on and how to um, reduce those types of responses. Because, like I said, these are a part of us. Like our body may do one of them, all of them. They're going to do one of them, but they may be a mix of them as well. And so, because I for sure have definitely been in fight and freeze at the same time before. Well, first it was fighting. I'm like, okay, let me slow down. So I just wanted to share that it's like it is okay that we have these responses because again, this is our survivalistic instinct. So anybody want to add any questions? Anyone add anything?
Yeah, I have a question. So do we naturally gravitate towards one just by lived experience, or is just a compilation of uh,
Yeah,
stuff
life
that we've been through in life?
it's a compilation of it. And so it's like I said, just like I said a little bit earlier, like usually trauma, if you've been through some type of trauma, it usually impacts how you do respond. Now, as you get older and get more life experiences, it may change and it just may look differently. And so, like, for example, I'll say what my fight response used to be like, I'm literally ready to physically fight. Then as I got better and better in life, I'm just like, it went to yelling. And now it's more of like, let me actually think about what's going on with me and say what's going on. So there can be different phases of each thing for sure. So for like, even for freeze, I used to just I would just not say anything, to where I'm just like, oh, I don't know what to do. Because again, it's a perceived danger. And so to now where I'm as an adult, if I do freeze, I'm just like, okay, something's going on, doesn't want to help me move forward. Let me figure out what's going on within me. Does that help, Celie?
Yeah, no, that's good clarifying. But from like I mean, is it like well, another follow-up question, is it a like personality A will always do a fight response versus, someone who is stoic will always freeze? I mean, is it can you put people in boxes like that or not necessarily?
I mean, I think because everybody is, even if you have a type A personality, everybody's not the same type A personality. So it's really pertaining on the person, because everybody has very different lived experiences. And so we can't say that this person will do this type of person will do this. And so, I mean, even if we think about our cultures in general, to where we think about all these responses, like, even though like in general, we all say we do these things, but everyone still does it very differently, for sure. Is
Okay.
that
Yep.
okay? Anybody else? Any comments, questions, or I move forward? We're good? Okay. All right. Again, anger is not the problem. Again, if anything, if you don't take away anything from this class, anger is not the problem. What the issue is, it's the behavior that we do because of anger. It's the behavior that gets us in trouble. And so a lot of times, like what Sala was saying, and what I continue to, say as well, is like, that's why anger gets a bad rap, because it's like whatever behaviors we do, a lot of times we're just repeating behaviors that we saw or we witnessed, and we're, a lot of times it can be in a highly negative sense. It can be physical, it can be cursing, it could be whatever it is. But again, anger is not the issue, it's the behavior that you do. And this is something, when I used to work with elementary kids, this is what I would always say to them. I go, you being angry is not the problem, hitting somebody is the problem. They're like, oh, okay, Miss Scarlett, that makes sense. It's like, yeah, you can be angry. I said, but if you're using anger to hit somebody, the hitting is what's getting you in trouble. Because I wanted to take out that stigma of what anger really is. Like, it is okay to have that feeling. Because like I said, anger, like I said a little bit earlier, anger is used to protect us. It can be used in a positive way. And sometimes we need anger, and it's okay. It's absolutely okay. But again, it is the behavior that you do that gets you in trouble. It is not the anger that is the issue. Sala, anything you wanted to add before I go on?
No, I think that's a good idea. Just that it can be a protective factor, like, anger. And we always reiterate so many times throughout this class, and why we decided to kind of do this class too, because we do see, a lot of people in our community where it's like, they're coming in for counseling because, oh, I have an anger problem. I have, my wife says I have anger problems, but then when you're sitting down and you're hearing their story and you're going with them through it, and you help them understand and really learn about anger, and really kind of understand, it's like, okay, well, really teaching them all of these things that we're sharing in this class, and how anger is not the issue. It's usually what you do with that anger, what you do with that emotion. Are you expressing it in a constructive way, or are you expressing it in a destructive way? Because usually it's a destructive way that's gonna, that people see. And also why people kind of view anger in a bad light is because people mainly express anger in a destructive way, where it is causing harm either to themselves or someone else or property, right? So this, when in therapy, it's having to, one, do whole lot of psychoeducation on this emotion and why it's such a bad rep, why people perceive it as a bad rep, but when it's not. And then also kind of teaching people just some ways to be able to express it in a constructive way, in a way that would be helpful, in a way that lets them know, okay, well, if we say that anger is a secondary emotion, what's underneath the anger? And which Scarlett will get into further. Go ahead.
Yeah, and so speaking of destructive behavior, this brings up my anger story. Um, and I honestly enjoy sharing this story of mine because the destructive behavior that I had let me know that I needed to work on something. So what happened was, so I don't know, you all will see, I have 2 scars right here. So what happened was in college, I was on the track and field team. I was a thrower, and my teammate and I we had we had a very, very heated group meeting, like team meeting, like just the throwers. So then my teammate got upset at me for something she perceived she thought I did, which I didn't do. So I got angry, like extremely, when they say you see black and red, I did. And what happened, I ended up calling a teammate. I said, hey, you need to get here because I'm about to lose it. And I think I'm going to go to jail if I hit this girl. Because it was my teammate, because that's how much she pissed me off. So instead of hitting her, I ended up punching a brick wall. So I had to have surgery so that they can, because these 2 fingers right here were down here. And I had to, I lost my senior season. I couldn't participate in sports in my senior season anymore because I was injured. I was injured for the rest of the year. And the fortunate thing was I'm very grateful that I did not hit her. I'm super honestly grateful. I'm glad the brick wall was there because they had to connect. So the surgery I had, they had to reconnect my bones because my bones were literally cracked. They were sitting on top of each other. And so I remember going home and I just said, man, I thought I had my anger under control. And I was like, I didn't. So I had to really recognize, like, I got to figure this out because I can't keep doing that, because that right there was a buildup, was an absolute buildup of like just the contention that was going on throughout the year, not just on the team wise, but also personal wise, also family wise. And it just came out in that moment. So again, this is why I talk about the shaken soda bottle and the emotions in your closet. And so it was in that instance where I said, I got to do the work. And what was so interesting, because there wasn't a lot of Samoans on my campus. I went to a predominantly white institution, and a lot of people had came to me. They were just like, man, are Samoans angry? Are you? And I'm just like, oh, well, we got some tempers. I'm just like,
That tends to be the stereotype, right?
it is.
Mhm.
And I had said because I knew that I was the first this is the Eastern cultivistic, because I knew I was the representation for a lot of Pacific Islanders, because I grew up in Florida. So there wasn't a lot of us there. So I took on that responsibility was given to me, unconsciously, that I have to be the representative for my culture, my people. So because a lot of times when they saw that, they were people from other teams were really shocked. They were like, man, we didn't realize how strong Samoans are. I go, oh, just don't get in on the bad side. That's what I would say.
Yeah.
Stay on the good side, please. And so we would just talk, and I would just throw jokes at them, and I said, our culture is so strong that sometimes if you're on the bad side, I say, they will literally dislike your unborn children. Like that's how this stuff goes. Like, what? And yeah, that's the part of the anger, and that's the really part of like, I never mind sharing that story, because it made me recognize that there was something deeper that I had to work on, that at that moment I wasn't in control of myself, and then I had to realize, like, I was letting someone else contribute to what I could have done differently. But I'm still to this day super grateful that I did not hit my teammate. Because
I'm glad too, Scarlett. I'm glad, because I don't know where you'd been. You wouldn't be here doing this anger class with me.
I would not be in public. I'll just say that. I wouldn't. And so I think that's the thing it's just it's like recognizing, like, I remember talking to my teammate, be like, it's not you. And like, and I just had to tell her, it's
Mhm.
okay, it's done. Because she was scared, like she was scared of me. And like, and that's what I didn't want. I didn't want somebody
Mhm.
because they saw me do this thing, this destructive behavior. So just like Sala was saying, through anger, it's the behavior that you can become destructive, but so that's my anger story. So
Yes, yes. And we're always so thankful and grateful. Thank you for sharing your anger story. I think it just adds so much to our class. And also it just lets everyone know that's participating, like just how passionate we are about having conversations around this, because we also have our experiences around what we are sharing with our community. So always thankful. That's my partner in crime right there. So thank you for sharing that. Part of your story, it was like, and you were talking about like somebody was like, man, what's up with Samoans? And they're always like y'all always angry or something. Like there's this stereotype, and it reminded me of like, just I've been in the military for a long time, and I remember joining the military, I'm this teenager, and you get in the military and Samoans already have some kind of a reputation in the military, and it's usually around like, oh yeah, they're nice people, but then when you piss them off, it's like, so it's almost like there's this expectation around how we are responding as well. So it just made me wonder like how many of our community members are out there where they're just kind of maybe not sure yet how to express how they're feeling, whether it's anger or a different emotion, but then like there's this stereotype, and it's almost like trying to live up to the expectation of what people are expecting, Tongans to respond, how Samoans are supposed to respond to certain things, how, just different cultures and how they're being stereotyped to respond a certain way about things. So that kind of came to my mind when you were sharing your story, and how someone was like, what's up with Samoans, and how they respond. It's like, yeah, they saw you punching a wall and they'd be like, what's up with y'all?
yeah, I mean, and I think it's unfortunate because it's an individualistic response. It's not in particularly the culture response, but I think that's part of what we learned. It's like you
Yeah.
put the culture, you put the community, you put the family before you, and if you misrepresent that, there's a list of things they will say to you.
Mhm.
And in order to get back into the group, like, like what Dom was saying earlier, like what I was saying to Dom earlier, like there's like these long list of things you have to do to get back just into the good graces. And that's, it's truly unfair. So,
Mhm.
Julie, is there something you wanted to add? I saw you.
Oh no, I was getting ready for the what's underneath part. Like, how do you unpack it and figure that out?
Seely's ready. He's like, how we handle this? How we handle this?
No, because what I will say is this: me and my daughter, we really love watching like Karen videos, um, of where people like film those folks who go crazy in public over, black people doing a barbecue where they're not supposed to, or selling water. It's like, man, what really upset that person? Where eventually they got fired, right? Where they couldn't cognitively think of, oh, I am a representative of, like for me, example, King County, I am a pillar of my community. All these factors go in, but those people still blow up on those other folks. It's just like, oh man, they must have some underlying issues that they're not dealing with. So I'm just fascinated because, as I mentioned, me and my daughter really like watching those things together, and just
Yeah.
like, man, people are crazy.
Well, I mean, I would say for the Karen videos, that's definitely something different. That's for me how it comes across, and this is just my opinion. That comes off of more control and dominance, rather than it comes out as anger, but it's more for me. What it's saying, it's more of the control thing. Like almost, it's literally questioning existence. So that's what I say. What the difference is in regards to the Karen videos.
Oh no, that's good. It's just more or less, I was just curious if there's like mitigating strategies that people can, think of. But as you mentioned, when you see red, you see red. I mean, at that point, it's a little too late. But in people's, processing of things, you're just like, oh, I've got to factor these things in too. I'm a dad, I have kids, people look up to me. This is the organization that I represent, things of that nature.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the part of the anger video that we show, because like, the prefrontal cortex is our decision maker. When you are angry and it's a buildup, that literally shuts off. So this is why now we're going to talk about how to start sharing anger healthfully, because like I said, anger is always a buildup of something. So for my anger story, for me, it was a buildup of frustration, what was going on within the team. So regarding when it comes to anger, I always recommend, because I still do this to the day, is to stop and take a break immediately. Because the more and more you go into this, the more and more the anger builds up. So like in the video, it was talking about using conscious thinking, which is the prefrontal cortex where we make our decisions, versus letting emotion and anger take over. The other part is I attached in the chat is the 50 ways to take a break worksheet. For clients that I worked with before, what I always recommend to do is to get in that worksheet. And I love that worksheet because I that's where I get a lot of my taking a break ideas. I recommend to them to get 2 colors. One color you use to circle everything that you do currently. Another color is to circle what you would like to try, and what you would like to try. I always recommend to try that one thing. Like I said, this is the reason why I give that list, is to build your list of go-tos. And like I said, take a picture, take a picture of it on your, or a screenshot of it on your phone so that you have that. So, because one of the things that's on there, 50 ways to take a break, which I still do to this day, is I do cloud watching. I watch the clouds to take a break, because it's the creativity part that I like. And it's literally, I'm able to check out for whatever I need to check out from, and so I can address. And so again, is to truly, truly stop, remove yourself from the situation, and to take a break. Because if you could see, even if you think about your own self, it's just like when we think, because I can definitely talk about to where when I didn't stop, it just got worse and worse and worse and worse. Next thing, use the feelings wheel. Per Seeley's nephews, the colonialistic wheel. But it's not. So use the feelings wheel, please. Again, take a screenshot of it. I still use the feelings wheel till this day. And so again, it's to identify the surface, the middle, and the root feelings. It's very important that you identify the root feeling of what's going on, because if you, like I said in our last Know Your Feelings class, if you identify the root feeling, a lot of times we won't even get to that surface feeling, because you're addressing, because whatever the root feeling is, that's the need that needs to be addressed. Because if you don't address that, that's when this buildup keeps happening. And that's where these layers of feelings keep happening. The other thing is share with somebody who's emotionally safe. And it's important. And I say that because a lot of times we share with people who may antagonize or egg us on. Yeah, don't let them do that to you. That's not what you need in the moment when you're angry, because that's the buildup of that. So it's a matter of finding somebody who can identify what you need in that space. So for example, if I'm angry, I will call a friend. I'll be like, hey, I just need a listening ear. I don't need any advice. Can I just vent? They'd be like, you got the floor. So that's what I'm saying, really identifying who that emotional safe person is, and whoever that is, go to them first rather than going to the people you feel like would be that. So really sitting down and identifying who's your emotionally safe person or persons. Lastly, another tip is journal your feelings, write them down, video blog, use art, scribble, paint, whatever you want it to be. Journaling does not only have to be writing. A lot of times people, when they see journal, they're like, oh, I have to write. Journaling is whatever you want it to be. It is absolutely whatever you want it to be. And so so for me, sometimes I'll scribble and then I'll color my scribble, and that's my journal. That's my journal entry for the time. I'll video blog, and that because I'm just like, I just need a space to talk about, because there has been scientific proof shown that if you express what's going on inside and put it in something outward in a healthy way, it does help you. It helps with the endorphins. It scientifically helps improve your mood, improve your feelings as well. So there is what we're gonna try is a guided breathing exercise. It's 5 minutes only. Part of what the reason I wanted to do that is because how it said in the video, how meditation can help increase the gray matter of our brain to help us relax, to help increase and help reduce like that our anger responses. So this is part of like the stopping and taking a break immediately, which is important. So Sala, is there anything you wanted to add before I get to the 5-minute guided meditation?
No, as you prep for that, just want to really hone in on the stop and take a break immediately, because most of the time when we are seeing red, there's no way anyone can reason, with you in that moment, because like Scarlett said, that part of your brain that is in charge of executive type of thinking and functions, that went offline as soon as, your emotional brain takes over. And now you're just, seeing red, you're just up there, right? You're angry. So it's in that moment, like if you can remember anything, it's just remove yourself from that situation, remove yourself from that conversation, go to the bathroom if you're at work, and be able to put some water on your face, give yourself some time. And the reason why we're really wanting to go through the guided breathing exercise, because a lot of times, like, we tend to not want to breathe at that time, but it is that moment that it is crucial for your brain to be able to get the oxygen that it needs in that moment, right? Because then if not, we're going to be explosive in our responses. So if anything that you could remember in that moment, and you're just, everything is boiling up and you're angry and you're about to punch the wall, you're about to hit somebody, you're about to tell off your coworker, your boss, or whoever, stop, take a break, like remove yourself from that situation, go somewhere else, take some deep breaths, like intentional, like breathing from your diaphragm type of breathing, right? Because your brain has went, like, the part of your brain that thinks logically went offline. And you're just kind of going on that emotional part of your brain where it's like you can't even see reason right now. You can't even, and you see this sometimes when people are trying to, try to reason with you when you're like angry about something. You're like, no, let's go. Like, nobody can reason with you at that moment, because you're just all in emotions in that moment. So important and key to remove yourself from that situation. Take a break, like hone in on that, take a break, and take some intentional deep breathing exercises, which Scarlett is going to guide us through, because we really want to make sure that that you're able to see that and see what that's like.
So just to add on to what Sala was saying, when the importance of breathing, when you stop breathing, there's something that happens within the body. And because like I said, your brain needs the breaths to help, circulate the blood. As soon as that cuts off, just so you all know, that signifies danger to your body. So when that signifies danger, that's why we go all over the place. That's why there's no reasoning, because it's like, now you feel like you're in danger. So that being said, I'm going to do, you do not have to participate. This, of course, is voluntary, but I wanted to do this 5-minute guided breathing exercise so that you can see, like, you can feel the difference of what it's like to go through one of these, and that it only really takes 5 minutes of your day. That's it. So with that being said, I want you to start by settling in to a comfortable position. Allow your eyes to close or keep them open with a softened gaze. Sit in a way that you feel relaxed and also alert, with your back straight, but not straight. Feel the sensations of your breath. When you're comfortable, take 5 full, long, deep, slow breaths. As you breathe in and out, feel the sensations of breath filling your body and leaving your body. Connect with the sensations as fully as you can. Feel a sense of energy on the in-breath and a sense of letting go with each out-breath. relaxing into the seat beneath you. After the 5 breaths, let your breath return to its normal rhythm and keep paying attention to the sensations of breathing in and out. Notice how the inhale is different from the exhale. You may experience the air as cool as it enters your nose and warm as you exhale. Notice the spaces between your breaths. Start letting your attention be drawn to the spaces in your breath. In the short pause after you breathe in and after you breathe out. Explore the quiet. Notice that even if no thoughts are currently present, you're still aware in that quiet space. Come back to your breath if your attention wanders. Remain as the kind and curious observer we talked about earlier. Gently notice anything that arises in your inner landscape. Thoughts, body sensations, emotions, memories, worries. When you become aware of a worry, you can just note it and come back to it, noticing the breath and pauses. You can even say worry as you do so. If you begin to experience a cycle of thoughts or emotions, do your best not to become involved with them, just for this short period of practice. Let your mind rest in the pauses. With each breath, let your attention rest for a moment longer in the pauses. You can gently hold your breath for a fraction longer to prolong the pause, but without any strain or feeling out of breath. If at any point you feel a little stressed, keep feeling the breath sensations. Feel your whole body expanding and contracting with your breath and become more and more present in between the spaces. Be curious and kind about whatever happens. Always watch for self-criticism and judging. Be kind and curious with whatever you notice. Be a good friend to yourself by being present with compassion and openness to whatever you experience. Stay with the practice, feeling your breath, resting in the silent spaces, and watching with kind curiosity. When you're ready, take a breath and finish. Woo! Are we
Who's super relaxed?
Yeah. So
Mhm.
that was 5 minutes. That's it. 5 minutes only. And
Mhm.
what the purpose of that is so that you can reset. You can reset and you can calm down, and so that you can think clearly. So what I love about breathing exercise is just there's this openness that happens.
Mhm.
And it's just 5 minutes And I always say to my clients, give yourself permission to do what you need to do for you. So that's it. That is our presentation. I thank you all. If there's any questions, any comments, please unmute yourselves and share. If Sala or Celia, if there's anything in the chats, let me know. But I thank you all. I really, really appreciate it. Sala and I greatly appreciate you all being here. Anything in the chat?
Absolutely. Dom says, so good. And he says, I need a recording of that to play in my ear.
I think all this information has been so helpful and very great practical application that we can take and actually use. I think a lot of times, we think meditation or like, okay, as soon as I sit down and like close my eyes, my brain is like all over the place. But to actually be drawn towards your actual breathing and without judgment and being present is really powerful. So thank you for working us through that.
You're welcome, Dom. And I mean, that's one of the things that Sal and I love about these presentations and what we do, because our goal was to give everyone actionable steps that they can use immediately when we're done with these presentations. And we wanted to make it actionable steps that is simple, that is something that you can gravitate towards, because a lot of times what I've seen in past before is it's a lot of things that some people just, it can be overwhelming. And so we wanted to present to where it was just like 1 to 3 things that you all can use, whether it's today, tomorrow, and you can, example, like the feelings wheel or the 50 ways to take a break or the breathing exercise. Because those are some things those are things that you can pass on or keep it to yourself, whatever you decide. But if you notice somebody, you can, and that's the thing we have about our information is that this information that you can share it with somebody else. So now when you see somebody angry, you can possibly be like, oh man, I wonder what else is going on underneath them. Like what's really good? Like what's underneath that? So that's the purpose of us having these types of conversations.
Yes, absolutely. Things that you can, start applying as well in your families, in your homes, with your kids. A lot of the time too, we get parents that are, just overly overwhelmed with, maybe parenting. I mean, who isn't, right? As a parent, and there's just those moments when there's so much going on. Maybe you get home from work and things are stressful and the kids are crying, the kids haven't done their chores or anything like that. And you can feel yourself just getting angry. You can feel that rising up. And just a reminder, like that's the moment where, if you feel like, okay, I think I need a pause. I need to just go ahead before you start exploding everywhere to the kids and you start saying things you end up regretting saying. But just using that pause, that power of the pause, right? Where you're able to kind of maybe go to your room for a bit and just take some deep breaths, like intentional breathing, like that. I have found that to be helpful in raising my kids and being able to manage not only myself, but for my kids as well. It's been helpful. And it's a tool that I know that they'll continue to use as well.
Absolutely, for sure.
Yeah, I'm going to figure out how to splice that. Because having you there, Scarlett, made a difference because you kept bringing us back to center as my mind was drifting away. It was like, oh, yeah, if you're thinking about something else, come back. Oh, okay. Yep, you're right.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. I think that's the thing with meditation. People always think you have to have a clear mind. It's just allowing the thoughts to go and completing it. And that it's just, but to not to go so far to where you're forgetting about self. So that's why let's bring it back, so that we don't get too far away. Because, part of what we'll continue to talk about is the importance of self-care and the importance of taking care of yourself. So yeah, I'm glad it was helpful for sure. So
Yeah. So thank you to you both. Just want to let the Facebook viewers and our folks here know, and I'll send out an email too, that we'll actually be back in 3 weeks on April 11th, talking about running away, a 2-part discussion to explore why someone feels like running away. I unsuccessfully did that a lot growing up. well, we got down the street, then we turned around and came back because how are we gonna feed ourselves? But yeah,
Mhm.
that thought process has gone to mind.
Yeah.
With that, I'm gonna stop
Yes.
the Facebook Live, but thank you both,
Thank you.
and then stop the recording.